Thank you so much. I am indeed honored to be here. I got to tell you that you may not think it means it matters, but when I'm able to walk into a room and to receive the kind of applause that you just gave me, in the words of my 88-year-old mother, former sharecropper, who only had a second-grade education, she would say, it makes my heart glad. Thank you. But I want you to understand something. And I want you to embed this in the DNA of every cell of your bodies. For me, and the things I stand up for, it's not about politics, it's what I believe. There's a big difference. It's what I truly believe. It's one thing to say stuff and try to figure out how the polls are saying things should go, but I believe that we must be authentic and we must be about integrity. And even if we disagree, it must be based on integrity. And so I'm very glad to join your President, Colleen Kelly, and she is a staunch advocate for you. Oh, she's a tough sister. She's tough. There are some union leaders that it's hard to see where they're coming from. You can see where Colleen's coming from a mile away. And where she's coming from is standing up every day, trying to make life better for every single one of you. Give her another hand. I also want to take a moment to thank all of you for your incredible work. One of my favorite theologians, Swindle, says it is the things that you do when you're unseen, unnoticed, unappreciated, and unapplauded that matters most. And I know that sometimes you get a little discouraged. I know sometimes when you watch C-SPAN and watch our hearings, you get a little discouraged. But I've come by here to let you know I got your back. I got your back. I've got your back. People do not seem to understand that so many people come to government knowing that they're not going to make the kind of money that they would make in the private sector. But they come to government to feed their souls, to help other people, to lift them up, to make their lives better. And that's you and you and you and you. And so I thank you. Now I've gone completely off script, so I got to get back to my script. I'm also very pleased to have joined my chairman of my committee, Jason Chavis. I saw him on the way out the door, and certainly I congratulate him on his appointment. And the question I get asked most often, other than, are you John Lewis? Amen. I know some of y'all thought I was John. I couldn't even get out of the Rayburn building, Colleen. Lady came up with her 7 children. Oh, Mr. Lewis. Oh, I mean, and she went on and on and on. And because I did not want to embarrass her in front of her 7 children, I didn't think you remember. So I want to thank the nearly 400 NTEU members who are in the audience today, and some of whom have traveled long distance to be here. And I'm humbled and impressed by your commitment to public service and doing such a good job for the American people. I'm also grateful for the important work that each of you does every day for your fellow citizens. You are the dedicated men and women who provide vital services to Americans to protect our borders and ensure that our food and drugs are safe. I'm honored to be speaking with you today to discuss important legislative issues that already have and may in the future impact your lives. And sometimes I gotta tell you, I have to sometimes pinch myself when I realize the opportunity that I have to change the trajectory of people's destinies. And I take it very seriously. And in our committee, as you know, we deal a lot with issues that affect you all, and Colleen mentioned them in my introduction. These past few years have been very difficult for federal workers, amen? Come on, don't act like y'all don't know what I'm talking about. Don't be cute. Because I do be talking about y'all in a positive way. As part of the federal government's efforts to reduce the deficit and pay for unemployment benefits for millions of workers, federal employees had to sacrifice nearly $140 billion as a result of a 3-year pay freeze and pay cuts in the form of increased retirement contributions for newly hired employees. They also had to endure sequestration, cuts and furloughs, and a 16-day government shutdown. Y'all remember that? Don't ever forget it. Legislation also required budget cuts, pay freeze extensions, arbitrary workforce cuts, increases in retirement contributions, decreases in retirement benefits, and the elimination of federal pensions. It seems like you all are at war. Budget cuts have caused the federal government to eliminate jobs for the last 3 years in a row. For 2014, the government lost 19,000 jobs, not including postal jobs. Continued job losses in the federal government may endanger agency missions and disrupt vital services to the public. These events, as well as relentless attacks on the pay and benefits of federal workers, have caused federal workforce morale to drop to historic lows. The Partnership for Public Service found that worker morale and engagement fell each of the last 4 years to an all-time low. Satisfied and engaged federal employees are critical to achieving government missions and delivering vital public services. Congress cannot continue to target the federal workforce to achieve deficit reduction without causing serious consequences. Hello, you can clap for that. Our government and the American people need and deserve a motivated and engaged federal workforce. We know what happened to federal workers in the last Congress, but what can they expect in this Congress? With all due respect to my friend and colleague from Utah, Mr. Chavis, unfortunately, I believe that we will see an unprecedented and extremely damaging assault by congressional Republicans to reduce worker pay, gut their due process protections, and slash the benefits that they and their families rely on every single day. I fear that much of that kind of legislation will move through the Oversight Committee, but I'm committed to defending federal workers to the best of my ability. And let me give you a footnote on that. It's hard. It's hard when I've listed all the ways that you all have been attacked. And I did not mention the negative things that are said about you all. They call y'all everything but a child of God. No, I'm serious. And I said to my colleagues one day, hello, we congresspeople are federal employees too. I told them the last time I checked, my paycheck had Treasury of the United States of America on it. And so, for example, we will likely see the introduction of bills to reduce the size of the federal workforce. It's still early in the new Congress, but bills have already been introduced that would cut the government budget by up to 5%. Other bills would cut the federal workforce by 10% through attrition and slash the civilian defense workforce by 15%. The sequestration budget cuts are scheduled to return for fiscal year 2016 unless Congress modifies them. And I am concerned that House Republicans will propose increasing the budget cap for the Department of Defense and then offset this increase with even deeper cuts in non-defense agency budgets. They will likely use a reconciliation bill as a vehicle for finding savings, which may include provisions for decreasing retirement benefits. We could also see legislation that would eliminate federal pensions for new hires. Last year, Congress passed and the President signed a bill that gave the VA Secretary greater authority to fire executives without notice or an opportunity to respond to the charges. We may see legislation that would apply these provisions to rank and file employees in the government. I think we need to be very careful when we are considering legislation that would reduce due process rights for federal employees. These due process protections exist for very good reasons. They date back to 1883 when our government was trying to address abuses and corruption in the federal government. Without the protections of the Pendleton Act and other statutes, there is a very real risk of politicizing our federal workforce and returning our civil service back to a system of patronage. Ladies and gentlemen, as I say to my committee all the time, we're better than that. Some propose making federal employees at-will employees. They argue that the federal personnel system is too protective of employee rights, making it difficult to get rid of poor performers. They claim that we need to revise the law. My response is that the tools to deal with poor performers are there, but that managers are not using them. Come on. In a 2009 study of how federal government addresses poor performers, the Merit Systems Protection Board concluded the failure to address poor performance lies with managers stating, and I quote, "Addressing poor performance by merely changing a law that sets forth how to demote or remove a poor performer is not a feasible solution. Rather, the government must concentrate on managing the performance of its employees," end of quote. Many of my Republican colleagues support a transition from the general schedule system to a pay-for-performance system. One of the key attributes of the GS system is that it helps ensure that people get, quote, equal work for equal pay, end of quote. I fully embrace this principle. One of the indications that the GS system is working is data from the Office of Personnel Management showing that the gender gap has shrunk dramatically over the past 20 years from 30% to 11%. I want it to be even. I believe that a woman deserves the same pay as a man for equal work. Another thing that I want to point out about pay for performance is that the Defense Department already tried implementing it through the National Security Personnel System, but this system failed. Congress repealed the authority because of lack of transparency, bias, and subjectivity in performance ratings. Last Congress, legislation to change the federal employees' health benefits program included proposals to convert the government contribution portion of the premium cost into a voucher. That depresses me. As you know, vouchers could be used to shift the burden of medical costs onto employees, especially if they are indexed to the Consumer Price Index and not the medical inflation rate, which is often much higher. We may also see legislation that would require agencies to fire federal employees who are delinquent on their taxes. But this legislation would actually be counterproductive. Instead of enabling the payment of the bill, the federal employee is terminated from their jobs and wouldn't be able to pay anything. Like, as my youngest daughter would often say, "Duh." What are my priorities? I often say that in my time and in my space, I must make a difference with God's grace. And I say to you that you are where you are for a reason. You're there for a reason. And I know that you get discouraged. I know that there are times you want to just give up. I know that there are times when you say that I'm not appreciated. But I've stopped by here to tell you that you are where you are for a reason. It may only be for a season, but you're where you are for a reason. And I say that because after celebrating my 64th birthday, I just started thinking a lot about what brings me happiness. And you know one of the things that I discovered? It's not money. It's not. It's seeing that child get that scholarship. You know, the one who worked so hard and had a B average, but couldn't find any money anywhere. It's seeing the fellow down the street. By the way, I live in the inner city of Baltimore. I mean, see, I get a chance to see the real deal. I live on the Do the Right Thing block. I live where, and seriously, I have lived for 34 years in the same area where The Wire is filmed. So y'all know I know what I'm talking about. But to see the young children rise up to get good jobs, to hear the federal employees get a promotion, or to see one of my employees come in and tell me that she's about to be married. Those are the things that make me happy. It's not about money. It's about seeing a piece of legislation that I know will help people all over this country. It's about giving a speech like this one to inspire somebody to go out there and continue to be the best that they can be. And so I pause in my speech as I go off script to remind you that there's a reason that you are where you are. And the passion that you bring to your jobs, you could never be compensated for. And passion is contagious, no matter where you work. And so I beg you to be reminded of something that T.D. Jakes said when he visited my church about a year ago. He said his son was about to go off to college. And his son said to him, "Daddy, I'm not sure this is the thing I need to do. Maybe I need to go to another college." And his son is a singer. And he said, "Well, maybe, even if I get a degree from this college, I may not be able to get a job. And TDJ said he had already paid the tuition, amen. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I got one in college, so I know. But he said this, and for some reason, I think about this every day. He told us, he said he grabbed his son's face, Colleen, and he looked him in the eye, and he said, son, if it's not the thing, it's the thing that will lead you to the thing. If it's not the thing, it is the thing that will lead you to the thing. And everything that happens to you, and this is my quote, everything that happens to you up until this moment, good, bad, and ugly, whether it's the boyfriend that left you, or whether it's the house you didn't get, or whether it's the first job you had, everything that has happened to you, good, bad, and ugly, up until this moment, prepares you for this moment. Prepares you for this moment. You are here for a reason. You're here for a reason. And so what are my priorities? What's my reason for being here? Well, my priority is to do whatever I can to help federal workers obtain fair compensation and meaningful pay raises. I think pay raises are very important. They're very important. They allow you to be able to not to do things so much for you, but to do things for your family. To treat the little girl, to treat your 9-year-old to ballet lessons. To be able I remember when I was a little kid, Colleen, we couldn't even, to be in the band, you had to rent your trumpet for 25 cents a year. And I can remember to this day, my father did not have the 25 cents. And so I used to stand on the sidewalk as the parade went down the street. And I realized that 25 cents, if Daddy had it, he would have paid it. And it would have made a difference in my life. Who knows? I might have been some great jazz player. I don't know. But the point is, it makes a difference. And so, in fact, your pay is not even keeping pace with the growth of inflation. You know what that means? You're going backwards. President Obama's budget for the next year recommends a 1.3% pay raise for federal employees. I believe this is too low. I love the president, but I believe that this is far too low. It's far too low. That's why I co-sponsor with Representative Connolly the FAIR Act, which would, of course, as Colleen mentioned it, raise pay up to 3.8%. Even that's too low. I'm going to continue to strongly support whistleblower protections. We need to be ever vigilant in protecting the rights of the brave men and women who speak out about waste, fraud, and abuse and threats to health and safety. This past September, I filed an amicus brief along with Senators Grassley and Wyden and Congressman Issa, Farenthold, and Lynch in support. That's hard to even say. In support of, I'm gonna tell y'all a little joke about Issa in a minute. In support of whistleblower Robert McLean's appeal to the United States Supreme Court. McLean was a former air marshal with the Transportation Security Administration who was terminated for publicly disclosing that the agency planned on grounding air marshals from long-distance flights due to budget constraints and despite knowledge of imminent al-Qaeda attacks, I'm pleased to report that the Supreme Court recently ruled in Mr. McLean's favor. And so I'm working on introducing legislation that would strengthen enforcement of anti-discrimination and whistleblower retaliation laws. This is a top priority for me. Congress needs to devote resources and attention to strengthening recruitment and retention in federal government. We need to attract the best and the brightest and keep them. And otherwise, we will be in danger of making federal government the employer of last resort. We also need to guard against challenges that merit system principles and due process rights demand. We need to ensure that the federal hiring process is as open and fair and as competitive as it should be. I want to, again, thank all of you, but I want to leave you with these two thoughts, and then I've got to go. You know, Isa invited me to his portrait hanging the other day. Amen. And Colleen, they didn't think I was going to show up. I was early. So they had to call on me because I'm the ranking member, right? They had to call on me. So I know they did that with a lot of fear. So I got up and I was nice. I was nice. I said, Isa, my mother told me I should never, ever be mad at you. He said, why did she say that? I said, my 88-year-old former sharecropper mother said, don't be mad at that man. That man done made you famous. I got one more thing. I'll leave you with this simple story. Remember I told you, you must pursue happiness. You must pursue happiness at all costs. And I'm going to tell you this short story and then I'm out of here. About a year ago, I got a call from the wife of my mentor, one of my 3 mentors, one of whom has died. And this man had been my mentor for over 40 years. And his wife called me and said, Gerald's about to die. Anybody ever get a call like that? Said, you better come see him now. I'd never gotten a call like that. I'd never gone to visit anybody who I knew I was going to see for the last time. And so I went to visit Gerald, but I called my pastor first. And I said, how do you deal with this issue? He said, well, there are 3 things you got to do. Number 1, you got to be present. In other words, you got to leave your cell phone. You got to, if you think it's going to take you an hour, allocate 3 hours. And then he said, number 2, no matter how bad he may look, you keep a hopeful look on your face. And number 3, tell him about what he meant to you. So I went to Gerald, and he was all bent over, suffering from prostate cancer. The chemo was, he told me that he might fall asleep at any moment. And I began to tell him, I said, Gerald, I want to thank you so much for all that you've done for me. I said, you gave me my first job out of college. I said, I remember there were 5 people competing against me. They were smarter than me, sharper than me, had better grades than I had. But you hired me, and I just want to thank you, man, because you started my legal career off for me. And he says, Elijah, you made a mistake. I said, what? It wasn't 5, it was 9. Hurt my feelings. And I said to him, I said, Gerald, you've done so much for me. Yeah, I be seeing you on the television. I ain't know black people even be on them Sunday shows. I said, well, Gerald, you taught me everything I know. And after I'd been there for about 3 hours, he drifted off to sleep. And I said, well, this is a good time for me to leave. He'll remember me smiling and I'll remember him sleeping. And I got out the door and I heard a voice say, Elijah. And I came back, where you going, man? You ain't been here 15 minutes now. I've been through. Anyway, I came back. And he said, I just want to tell you one thing. I'm so proud of you, man. I said, well, thank you, Jerry. And I said, I'm proud of you, too. I'm so glad that I was a part of your destiny. He said, I'm so glad that I was a part of your destiny. Oh. Tears began to stream down my face because I knew that this man had taken me under his wing. Some of you all have done that. And that I was like a child to him that he was proud of. And it's nothing like hearing your father say he's proud of you. And so I sat down for another 30 minutes. Talked a little bit more, fell asleep again. I'm outside the door. Elijah. So I hear this voice. I said, I got to go back. This is the last time I may see him, so I got to go back. So I went back, and I'll leave you with this. And he said to me, he said, and I knew what he was doing. He was, oh God, he was slipping into death, but trying to hold on to life. But he said these words. First thing he said, will you preach my eulogy? And I said, Gerald, I'm not a preacher. And he said, well, you know, I was just at Jimmy Johnson's funeral the other day. And the reason why I want you to preach my eulogy is because at Jimmy's funeral, the preacher didn't even know his name. Said, I don't want nobody that don't know me. I said, yeah, well, okay, Jerry, I'll do it. Done. And then he said these words, and I leave them with you on the subject of happiness. He said, there's nothing that you had all the things I said. If you don't forget, if you don't remember nothing else. And he said, you may not understand this right now, but you understand it by and by. Remember this, that I'm so glad that you were a part of my destiny. Oh, God. He said something. He said, I thank you for being a part of my destiny. In other words, what he was saying, that he came upon the earth for a purpose, and that he had an opportunity to help me come up from a special ed kid, son of former sharecroppers, to become a lawyer and to become now the ranking member on the oversight committee. And the idea that he could turn on the television and see that his journey on life had been partly fulfilled by his interaction with helping me become who I became, that gave him life. And that, and that brought him joy. And that's why I say to you, when you feel a little discouraged, when you feel like giving up, don't forget about what makes you happy, what brings you joy. And you got to keep fighting, because guess what? This is bigger than you. This is not about you. It's bigger than you. You are fighting for generations yet unborn. And with that, I love you. I got your back.